2832 Those Forgotten. Oblivion. Cassie let go of the memory, the word ringing in her head with myriad meanings. This message she had left to herself was the reason why Nephis and Sunny left, it was the source of everything that happened since then. It was why the human domain had fallen while its rulers were absent. But what, exactly, did it mean? Cassie was frozen for a moment, overwhelmed by the vast implications hidden behind that single word. She was just about to grasp its meaning and fathom it. But then, something strange happened. As soon as the word oblivion surfaced in her mind, the dark ocean of memories seemed to respond to it. It was as if an imperceptible ripple spread across it, and the memories glistened. They glistened and moved, revolving slowly around a single point, her, the formless nexus of her will. Slowly at first, and then faster and faster, like a vast, ferocious vortex, or a boundless galaxy of glistening constellations. Cassie remained motionless for a moment, mesmerized by the beauty of the awesome sight. Then, she suddenly felt fear. No sooner than she did, the vortex of memories rushed forward like a radiant flood, flowing into her as a river. Arg! Cassie let out a mental scream. The river of memories was too vast, too overwhelming. She couldn't contend against it, not yet. All she could do was drown. No. Sensing the consciousness she had so laboriously pieced together begin to fracture under the pressure, Cassie gritted her teeth and called upon her will. Using it as a shield, she stemmed the flow of memories and pushed them away from herself, gasping for breath like someone escaping from a raging current. She managed to save herself, but a few memories still invaded her mind, blinding her like a flash. She saw the universe as it had been, as it was meant to be, or perhaps as it would have been once. Countless realms existing apart from each other, but also occupying the same space. It was a confluence of realms. It was the flame. A vast world rested under a boundless sky. The day sky shining upon the world was the realm of Sun God. The night sky shrouding it in darkness was the realm of Storm God. The pale moon moving across the sky was the eye of Beast God, and it illuminated the mortal realms below. The mortal realms sprawled far and wide, populated by all manner of beasts and creatures, as well as men. Below the red dust of the Mortal world lay the peaceful darkness of Shadow God's domain. The realm of Heart God, meanwhile, existed in the hearts of living things. There was a great tree whose roots rested in the Shadow realm, while its branches supported the heavens. Cassie gasped, rejecting the strange, inexplicable memory. But her mind was already consumed by another. Petrified, horrified, she saw a gargantuan skeleton slowly rising as its titanic bones formed and forged themselves. Its scale was truly inconceivable, casting a deep shadow upon entire existence. The skeleton's feet crushed the boundaries between the mortal realms, and the empty chasm of its abyssal eyes aimed a malevolent gaze at the sun and the moon, as if wanting to contain them. However, the skeleton was not a complete being, rather, as Cassie watched in horror, it was being born. Scarlet flesh grew and coiled around the snow-white bones, an ocean of crimson blood flowed into the river-sized veins, immense organs slowly formed in the titanic expanse of the boundless rib cage, vast steps of skin appeared to cover the red expanse of tectonic muscles. As the harrowing skeleton fully rose and straightened, its skull scraping against the sky, it was almost beginning to resemble a human. Cassie knew that she would not survive beholding the profane visage of the finished being. She groaned, rending herself away from the memory. And yet, another was already upon her. The gods were dead. Their corpses drifted forlornly, shedding rivers of golden ichor that glistened like stars in the void. Inside the holy expanse of the divine realms, the last vestiges of those born of the flame struggled to survive in the absence of divinity. A vile cancer nestled among the mortal realms that had been devastated by the war. It had already consumed many of them, forming a mass of profane darkness in the heart of existence. That darkness extended its tendrils to the mortal worlds around it, slowly absorbing them into itself. The few unfortunate souls who still survived there were doomed to experience a gruesome and appalling fate. That was the birth of the dream realm. However, something else had been born at the same time. It had been born in the hidden space between the realms, between dream and reality, woven out of strings of fate. Its vast, unfathomable tapestry glistened with silver light in the darkness, tethered to the souls of fallen deities it had consumed. It was the nightmare spell. The nightmare spell waited patiently as the dream realm slowly absorbed all the remaining mortal realms, becoming vast and terrifying. It waited while the profane darkness extended its tendrils toward the first of the remaining divine realms, the Sun realm. It waited as the nightmare strained to penetrate the walls surrounding the remains of Sun God. And only when the seeds of nightmare bloomed in the hearts of the people of Mictlan and the lands around it did the spell infect the dying world as well. It culled the population of the Sun Realm, putting all those who carried the seeds of corruption in their souls to the test. The seeds themselves became the battlegrounds for the spell's trials. Those who survived them stepped on the path of ascension and escaped corruption, those who did not succumb to it and became nightmare creatures. The spell pushed its carriers toward greater and greater power, knowing no mercy or compassion in its cruel ways. But still in the end, the Sun Realm fell. So, the nightmare spell retreated and waited once more. Until the Beast Realm fell. And so, the nightmare spell retreated and waited once more. Again and again. In the end, only the realm of war remained. Cassie escaped the ghastly memory, already knowing what happened next. 2833 fuel for her darkness. She lost herself in a different memory. It was a memory like all the rest, only more terrifying. No, there was something wrong with this one. There was something dangerous about this one. Something that told Cassie that she should have never witnessed whatever the memory hid, should have never experienced what the original owner of the memory had experienced. But it was already too late, because she was already remembering it. In that memory, she was a broken thing. Hidden behind a veil, her face was exquisitely radiant. However, beneath the red fabric of her dress, her lower body was a twisted horror of inhuman flesh. The things that hid beneath her skin, meanwhile, were even more dreadful. She was mad. A word as trifling as madness did not do her state of mind justice, but it was the only word Cassie could use to describe the absolutely alien, demented, berserk horror of the abominable strangeness that had taken over her head. It was unfathomable, wrong, and eerily revolting on a deeply fundamental level due to the appalling extent of its disturbing wrongness. Her consciousness was at odds with the world around her. In every place where her self came into contact with reality, her very being was engulfed by a gruesome, ghastly agony. The anguish she endlessly endured was not physical, but it might as well have been. Her entire existence was no different from torture. So, she wanted to visit that torture upon everyone else. She wanted to tear existence apart. I shouldn't be seeing this. The thought belonged to Cassie herself, not to the ghastly being whose memory she was remembering. But she was powerless to stop. She felt the irresistible, alluring scent of the sparks left behind by the flame. She wanted to destroy them, but she was also enthralled by them, bewitched by them, mesmerized by them. The scent filled her both with endless loathing and an overwhelming sorrow, as if she felt something that she once cherished but had lost forever. She hated it, and longed for it. But most of all, she wanted to consume it, to absorb it, to rend it apart and destroy it, and make it a part of herself. She was torment, one of the 6 plagues of the Great River. She was corrupted. No. In the memory, Torment was standing on the head of a hideous leviathan. The waters of the great river parted in front of its hideous maw, foaming like fresh blood in the light of the setting suns. Behind her, a horde of fearsome defiled abominations was snarling on the leviathan's back. And all around it, myriad sea monsters were swimming upstream with frenzied hunger in their eyes, each carrying a swarm of abominations of its own. The vast expanse of the great river was seething, the flowing waters sliced apart by their passing. The great armada of Verge had set forth to lay waste to one of the last human cities that still stubbornly clung to life in the tomb of Ariel. She was going to visit ruin and devastation upon them. She was also going to capture as many as she could alive, to share her torment with them for as long as their frail bodies, and even frailer minds, endured. She commanded the defiled armada. Or so it seemed. In truth, Torment was nothing but a broken puppet. She was a marionette dancing according to the will of the being who pulled her strings. That being was herself, her past self. Herself from before she had become Torment. That devious witch had maimed her own mind, burning much of it away to put in place a complicated web of conditions and prohibitions. She had erased some of her own memories, replaced others with false recollections. She had also made sure that Torment could only exist in the narrow confines of the actions allowed to her, incapable of breaking free, acting and reacting as she was meant to. So that even when her mind became consumed by corruption, she continued to follow the plan. Some time later, she was moving through a burning city. Her long tentacles carried her forward with stunning speed, just like they did in water. Her movements were swift and unpredictable, and she flowed through the rain of javelins that the most powerful defenders of the city had thrown with an eerie grace, unscathed. The defenders were powerful, they were valiant, they were skilled and full of resolve. But in truth, they had already lost. because their hope had been snuffed out the moment they saw Torment, the ghastly specter of the estuary. A moment later, she was already among them. That scent, that maddening scent. Human flesh rended, and blood flowed on the cobblestones. There were screams. There were wails. There were whispers of hopeless prayers, all of it fused into an euphoric melody that made her tainted soul sing. She could feel their flame flowing into her, fueling her darkness. It was the only thing about existence that wasn't agony, and therefore, it was the sweetest thing in the world. She moved through them like a bloody hurricane, catching powerful ascended champions with her tentacles and rending their bodies apart. Those who were stronger, she caught and raised to her face, so that they could look into her eyes. The latter screamed the loudest. But soon enough, the screams grew quiet. She paused for a moment. I wanted to capture some alive. Cassie wasn't quite capable of thinking in coherent thoughts anymore, but that was the closest interpretation of the alien movements of her mind she could find. She looked ahead. There, hidden in the temple of the dying city, was her prize. The Sibyl and her priestesses. Leaving a scene of ghastly slaughter behind her, she rushed forward. However, once she reached her destination, she realized that her prize had been stolen. Nothing moved inside the temple. The air was thick with the scent of blood. Everyone here was already dead, and their corpses were all horribly dismembered. The severed limbs were arranged into a demented mosaic in the prayer hall. In the center of the macabre mosaic, a man in tattered clothes sat on the floor, blood dripping from his tarnished crown. His dirty hair hung like seaweed, obscuring the mask of scars that served as his face. Torment, he looked at her and grinned. What took you so long? A grating, unhinged laugh escaped from his lips. Or perhaps it was a sob. Keep talking, tell me more, you worthless piece of scum. There was a jade sword laying in a pool of blood in front of him, and a vague silhouette standing behind him like a ghost. The mad prince shivered, and then clawed at his face, leaving new scars on it. Arg, torment, I almost made it all the way this time. But that lying scum, he didn't let me through. He looked at her with demented glee. The shadow, the future me, he threw me out, the bastard. He laughed. Oh, but his mere existence, it's proof that I'll succeed, one day. I'll make it out. She remained silent, looking at the corpses. She was overwhelmed by the loss of the sweet promise of holding them, torturing them, unmaking them, and taking their flame. The mad prince looked at her with pity. You're almost gone, aren't you? Torment, my poor partner. We've been together in this for so long, you and I. But now it seems that I have spent you completely. Rising to his feet, he looked at her with a sinister smile. You'll never leave this tomb. You have been buried here, forever. It serves you right, for what you did to me, but don't fret. He laughed. Once I'm outside, I will remember you fondly. The memory fell apart. 2834 UNZN. The memory ended, leaving Cassie alarmed and disturbed. It can't be. She had glimpsed too much in Torment's tainted mind. She had glimpsed things that she should have never seen. She had delved into the alien mind of her defiled past self, and now. Cassie felt something changing inside of her. Something seemed to have died, and something seemed to have been born. Something seemed to have moved in her heart, and something seemed to stop in her soul. Her very being was writhing in pain of a transformation as everything that comprised her, that was her, struggled against the vile rebirth. A force more terrifying than anything she could imagine was trying to change her, while a power she never knew she possessed was trying to preserve her. She knew what was happening to her all too well. It was corruption. No. Knowledge was the origin of all power. It was also the heaviest thing in the world. And, sometimes, it was the most dangerous thing in the world, too. It was forbidden knowledge that had corrupted the first seeker, after all. And once that knowledge spread, the defilement was born. By witnessing a memory of torment, Cassie had exposed herself to corruption. And now, her soul was at risk of becoming infected by the vile darkness. Calm down, she tried to compose herself, soothing her reeling mind with logic and reason. Corruption, in and of itself, was not that dangerous. No, actually, there was nothing more perilous than corruption in the world. But it also took different shapes and shapes. People tended to think of it as a monolithic force, but it wasn't. There was an almost endless variety to corruption. There had to be, considering that its source, the primordial void, was ever-changing. It could have different origins and conjure different ends. The causes of corruption differed in potency, as well. Take the most modest form it took, for example, the seeds of nightmare that bloomed in the hearts of aspirants. Merely forming a soul core was enough to destroy these seeds. Countless sleepers had done it with the help of the spell, while Rain did it all by herself, while awakening naturally. More than that, there were hundreds of millions of people who carried the seeds of nightmares in their hearts, but never succumbed to corruption simply because the power of the domains they belonged to, the power of their sovereigns, suppressed the seeds, preventing them from blossoming. The path of ascension was inherently opposed to corruption. Therefore, the higher one climbed on it, the more resistant to corruption they became. So even if Cassie had been infected by corruption because of Torment's memory, it did not mean that she would succumb to it. She could resist it, as well. In fact, she was ready to fight against it to her very last breath. But to do that, she needed to know what was happening to her first. She needed to finish piecing herself together and gain full control of her mind, her soul, and her will. I need to focus, Cassie Campo said herself, but then, another memory overwhelmed her. The last memory her will had failed to push away. It belonged to the Lord of Shadows. Or rather, it was a truth that the Lord of Shadows had received as a prize in Ariel's game. In that memory, much like in the last one, the world was on fire. Countless trees were burning, toppling with sorrowful groans. Ash obscured the sky, and unbearable heat melted the sanity of those who still fought in the boundless inferno. A sacred beast lay butchered on the pyre of burning wood, and in front of it stood a woman in torn leather armor, her stunning face bloodied and covered in ash. Harrowing wounds littered her body, and there was a peculiar emptiness in her eyes. The fire was consuming the world, and the battle continued to rage around her, but she seemed oblivious to the carnage. Swaying heavily, the woman took a step back and fell down. As she stubbornly struggled to rise, her blood soaking the ash, the flames crawled closer and closer. Before they consumed her, however, someone appeared out of the groans of dying trees, looking down at her silently. It was a tall figure wrapped in a nebulous mantle, wearing a fearsome mask of black polished wood. The mask snarled fiercely, but the gaze of the stranger was cold enough to douse the inferno that surrounded them. A voice that sounded like a myriad of dying curses resounded from behind the mask, mocking the woman. Berating her for being too weak, too pathetic, and for having forgotten her own name. It was the voice of Weaver. Quote, "You can forget everything else, everyone else, you can even forget your own name. But don't you dare forget the name of Weaver, the demon of fate. We must see each other again, you and I. So, come find me in the Shadow Realm. Come and see if someone like you can really kill Weaver. Then, after you've learned the true meaning of despair, then, I'll allow you to die, Orphany of the Nine." Hearing her own name, the woman seemed to regain some of her strength. Her eyes regained their focus, and she looked at the nebulous demon with dark, grim killing intent. Weaver laughed and rose, turning away from the bleeding huntress. "That's better." The demon of fate looked down, and then exhaled slowly. Their shoulders seemed to fall, and the eerie voice resounded once again from behind the fearsome mask. Quote, "Are you there?" Weaver straightened and looked up, as if seeing something no one else could see. As if addressing someone whom no one else could hear. Perhaps they were addressing the Lord of Shadows, who would see the vision of this truth in Ariel's game one day. Or perhaps they were addressing Cassie, who would witness the memory of the Lord of Shadows seeing the vision one day. "Are you watching?" The demon of fate chuckled hoarsely. "Watch well then, Epigon. Let me show you how gods die." The burning world shattered.